LinkedIn Echo Chamber. This is ML's Like Teen Spirit. Today we have Tony Allen with us. Tony, this show is where we bring data science professionals, machine learning engineers, analytics experts along to have real talks about how it really is on the job. Which begs the question, Tony, what the hell are you doing here? A marketer that snuck onto our list.
I was going to say you've definitely picked the wrong person for this. I'm none of those things at all. So yeah, I must have got lost somewhere in LinkedIn. But yeah, here I am.
Tony, thank you for joining us. Thank you for the support. I always start these segments with someone new with a quick intro, please. So I'd like it if you took 60 seconds, tell us where you've been, what you've been doing up to the current day, please.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I've been in CRM for probably about 8 years now. So I started off at Eurostar and sort of worked my way up from sort of quite a junior level in CRM, looking after their sort of customer experience side, helping people learn, what to do on the trains, what to take with them. Don't forget your passport. Worked in CRM all through COVID. I was probably the one of about 3 people non-furloughed throughout COVID for Eurostar. So that was a quite an interesting change of tack where we moved from kind of brand reputation to almost brand salvaging and sort of making sure that we can keep people traveling, but a very, very different type of message, which is really interesting. That sort of ownership of strategy led me to Volvo Cars, where for 2 years I headed up the UK CRM team. Introduced AI for copywriting, introduced machine learning for sort of audience building and analytics, and then moved to the global Volvo Cars role as well for about 8 months and looked after D2C proposition globally for Volvo. As I say, for about 8 months I was there, and then recently I joined Pearson Education as their global head of CRM. So I've been there for about 4 months now. Absolutely love it, and lots of sort of opportunities on the horizon there.
Good, thank you for that. Well, Tony, you said something in the middle of that intro, which is actually the reason that you're here. So the world has gone mad, being interested in AI things and so on and so forth. And in some other segments, I've got some experts to come along. They're going to demystify generative AI. They're going to explain a little bit how it works. They're going to talk about what it takes to truly adopt it in their businesses. But you were on my list as a bit of a trailblazer, actually. So you said you took AI as one of your copywriting tools.
Yeah.
I know the product was called Jasper
Mhm.
AI, and I wanted to use this session to kind of explain it a bit. You were a bit of a trailblazer because I think you said to me before we started, you took this in early 2021, which was before OpenAI had released ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So, Tony, you're like cutting edge marketer, in my opinion.
Bit of a pioneer.
Yeah, right. So I wanted to use this. We're not endorsed by Jasper, ladies and gentlemen, and we receive no income for this pseudo product review. But I thought it would be interesting to have you take us through it because lots of marketers in my audience. I've worked in marketing over 20 years, and probably people are thinking of, well, what do I take? Do I just jump on ChatGPT and start churning away at stuff, or do I take a more specific tool that's geared towards the marketer? So I wondered if we could really go through the whole thing of probably, well, what is it? And have you explain that to us. Maybe go through some of the features and how you use it. And of course, we do pros and cons. There must be good parts and bad parts. So what
Yeah.
is Jasper, Tony?
Yeah, sure. So, Jasper is primarily a content generation tool. So it uses AI to generate outputs based on sort of commands that you ask it to. So it is very, very similar in some formats to things like ChatGPT and some more sort of open source software. But it's Jasper AI sort of stands head and tails above because it basically it's done specifically for marketers and businesses. So it will create all sorts of different copy for you, different formats, different lengths, depending on what you need. They have something like 50 or 60 built-in templates. So if you need things like social posts or LinkedIn ads or subject lines for CRM, for example, they're all kind of tailored within Jasper, and it can create copy and templates for you based on that. It's also a really kind of quick turnaround. It's an opportunity that we saw at Volvo to be able to create content at a very, very high level and a very quick level as well. So it's absolutely a tool that doesn't replace the human, but it makes a human's life so much easier, because it means that you can create content very, very quickly. You can be very agile and responsive, and it also sort of allows you to create images and things like that through AI as well. And as I said, it's sort of specifically tailored to your brand. So it has sort of functions in it that learn a little bit more with you. So it's a little bit more tailored, a little bit more specialist than something that's a little bit more open source and free to use.
Good. So I think I'm going to replay what I think I heard, Tony, if that's okay. So it sounds like the templating is key. So there'll be lots of types of marketing formats templated. I think in a ChatGPT interface, you probably, you need to sort of specify, we're writing a blog today, here's what we're doing. So you probably minimize explaining what you're trying to do. So maybe minimizing the prompt side. It sounded like you said you can record some sort of brand guidelines and tones and these things. So probably that saved, again, rather than having to always be added to a prompt, like if you were just freestyling on ChatGPT, Jasper's kind of saving this. And you said it even has different formats, so imagery and these sorts of things. I know ChatGPT has become what's called multimodal, which is, can generate different types of data based on the prompt. But it sounds like Jasper was doing that for you, some time ago.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I think the main sort of feature that is probably worth doing a little bit of a deeper dive into, and what I think really sort of sets it apart from some of the other products that are similar to it, is that sort of ability to learn and to be able to be tailored to your brand. So they call it Jasper's brand voice. And what that means is kind of when you integrate Jasper or kind of bring it into your company, you have the opportunity to teach it. And tell it sort of how you want things to be outputted. So, you might use specific phraseology. You might use miles instead of kilometers. You might use happy instead of ecstatic, for example. Anything that is specific to your brand's tonality or any kind of sort of copywriting guidelines, you can kind of input that automatically into Jasper, and that will make sure that when it does create outputs and content for you, that's always taken into consideration. It also learns with you as well, which is really, really awesome. So it has the opportunity to kind of thumbs up or thumbs down kind of content that you can create. And it takes, again, that into consideration when it creates further outputs for you in the future. So if there's something that you don't like, it won't create that again. It won't suggest that again. If there's sort of words or phrases or kind of formats that you really think aren't appropriate for your brand, you can tell that to Jasper, and it will remove them from kind of future outputs unless you ask it not to. So that for me is the kind of the thing that really kind of sets it apart from things that are free to use and are open source, because it really does kind of create a brand specific tool for content creation, which I think is key. As marketers, everything has to be on brand, everything has to be following quite set guidelines, and this allows you to do that without having to worry. It also has a plagiarism checker as well built in, which I think is quite a concern for some people, especially with some of these open source things where you're looking at content creation. So that again is a real positive within Jasper there.
Oh, good, Tony. This is great. So the thumbs up, thumbs down sounds really good. So I'm a ChatGPT user, and I kind of know what starts to happen when you want to give so much feedback. Is you end up with these like monolithic sessions on ChatGPT where you're kind of slowly fine tuning it yourself, and by the end you've kind of lost track of what you liked, what you've done. It's really engaging to do it, and you do get an end result. But I think if you're wanting to reuse that all the time, there isn't a mechanism to do it. You just kind of, that session closes down. If the next day on ChatGPT you need to do something, you're kind of faced with the same position of slowly fine tuning. It sounds like the thumbs up, thumbs down, recording all this brand stuff is it like a config? Do you go to like an account page and start loading it up with information?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, I mean, you can create, I think it's unlimited different sort of voices for your brand. So you might create an email voice, you might create a blog tone of voice, you might create a social tone of voice, and you can completely predetermine how they sound and what that output is. So it's exactly that. You set that up when you're kind of onboarding Jasper, and then that is done. You haven't got to do it every single time. Every time you start a new session like ChatGPT, it's done. You don't got to worry about it, and you know with confidence that every single thing that's being churned out by Jasper is in line with your guidelines, which is a massive weight off it. It means you haven't got to sense check as much as you would with something that doesn't have that sort of functionality.
And what about kind of using it? Like how frequently, every week or every month? Is this something that was just on your desktop the whole time, or is it every other day you kind of jump in?
Yeah, no, I mean, we had a team. So we had quite a nimble CRM team, but we would use it every single day. Without a doubt, it was literally an additional person within the team. Every one of us within that team had access to it, and we would create copy, we'd create subject lines, anything that we needed, kind of content wise, it would be there for us. It would be imagery if we needed that as a kind of a quick sort of workaround. we'd have that sort of literally at our fingertips. You know, it has a Chrome extension or an Edge extension, so it's all built in. You haven't got to go out of a platform into something else. You haven't got to go out of Salesforce into Jasper. So it is so straightforward to use, and it does allow you to create it at speed, which is obviously the most important thing. So yeah, genuinely, it was probably more in attendance at the office than I was. I think Jasper was probably a better known person than me, sometimes thanks to working from home.
No comment on that, Tony.
Yeah, it's fair.
Tony, this sounds all good. Are there any like I don't know, watch outs, negatives, things you didn't expect, or things that you could talk about that, you know, someone listening to how great this all is might not hear or might not think of?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the first thing I would say is, you know, you can use Jasper without that kind of brand voice piece, and it's absolutely brilliant at creating content. But I think I would always say take the time to set it up properly. It does take a little bit of time, and it does, you know, require quite a lot of work to be able to make sure you kind of create your voices and your tones within it. But do it. Don't kind of just feel like you have to skip that step, because it can take time. I think it's well worth kind of putting those building blocks in place before you start using it. And similarly, one thing I found, and this is probably more sort of an issue with marketing as a whole, is in terms of the image creation. So obviously images are a little bit harder to get on brand sometimes. You know, you might have very specific image guidelines. And whilst Jasper will create some amazing images for you based on your kind of prompt or your command, sometimes it's a little bit hard to tweak it to make sure that it's completely on brand. So again, just to watch out there. But again, you know, I do definitely think the pros massively outweigh the cons. You know, I would struggle to find more than 2 or 3 cons that I've just kind of outlined there, whereas the pros I could write down and list for weeks on these.
What about results then? So you're just saying this made your team go faster or more engaging campaigns, or like what kind of would you summarize as the results of this?
Both, you know, and both are kind of equally as valuable as another. So probably the best example that I can probably give you is before we had Jasper, we'd be reliant on an agency, and as we all know, with agencies there are timelines and sort of sort of SLAs that you would adhere to, and it would normally take us about 14 days to go from sort of campaign conception through to creation and through to deployment. That would take, you know, rounds of copywriting and amends and feedback and translation for us. But with Jasper, when we introduced that, we were able to turn out a campaign within about 12 to 14 hours. So a massive reduction, you know, 24 times quicker than when we had it before. And that would include translation as well. So that's something I didn't mention, is that Jasper can output and transcreate in, I think, 20 odd languages, and they're always increasing that number as they grow. So 24 times quicker to create a campaign, and that is, you know, primarily because we had one, a team in house, but two, the content was created, you know, almost immediately, translated, signed off at the drop of a hat, which was amazing.
Oh yeah, right. So if you're a global marketer used to trying to deploy campaigns across territories, and it sounds awesome. Hey Tony, look, there's good news and bad news. Good news is you survived this interview with me. Congratulations. The bad news is we're hitting time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is ML's Like Team Spirit. Tony Allen, AI pioneer. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you very much. Cheers, John.